Hi, thanks so much for joining me today on another installment about our autism journey. Today I'm going to talk about stimming, meltdowns, and then I'm going to finish up with some great announcements about my twins in school right now, and also hopefully giving some other people a little bit of hope to push forward. So let's go ahead and dive right in. A lot of parents that deal with children on the spectrum, and as well as people on the spectrum, deal with what is called stimming behavior. And so a lot of people are unclear of what that is. It's basically behaviors, and it's STEM, not STEM like the flower stem, but STIM. And basically what it is, it's behaviors that everybody kind of has. Examples, people who twirl their hair or bite their nails or pop knuckles, things of that, tap their fingers. It's behaviors that kind of relieve some anxiety. And with children that are on the spectrum or people on the spectrum, a lot of stimming behaviors is ways for them to deal with anxiety as well. And they can be positive or negative. A lot of times twirling your hair isn't necessarily a real harmful behavior, but with children, with people on the spectrum, many times there will be harm, self-harm, hitting themselves, hitting their head against things that clearly are not a positive. And it can also be other things that are not harmful, but they may be socially unacceptable. My son was a hand flapper. He flapped a lot as a younger child. My daughter has walked on her toes since she was 2.5. Her heels were never down once I started seeing regression. That was one thing that really stood out to me. Even now I see videos of her before all of this started, even at 14 months, and she's walking around on her heels just like any other child would, and then boom, it was that fast, and those heels just stopped touching down. And now she has to make a conscious effort to put the heels down. It's something that we celebrate quite a bit, but it's one of the things she did. She also would deal with alphabet, with letters, whether it be flashcards. She had a wooden puzzle with all the alphabet. Anything that she could, she would use those letters and put them in order, and then pick them up and put them in reverse order, pick them up, put them in order, pick them up, put them in reverse order, over repetitiveness. And a lot of times with stimming, it's just a way of them. It's a reaction to overstimulation. It's a reaction to high anxiety. And our job is people that are caretakers of those on the spectrum. It's really a matter of, let's try and remove the negative stimming behaviors and either move them to a positive behavior, or even better, let's see if we can get rid of them. Now, getting rid of them, sometimes it's okay. With spectrum, it's something that's helpful to them. And if it's something that is helpful, if it is something that calms them, if it's a positive, it's not necessarily something that must be removed. So with my son, who was the one that would hit himself, the things I would do with him is I would physically, mildly, hug him. I would hug him to keep his arms down. It wasn't that I was squeezing him and gripping him. It's that I would hug him tight with his body facing out. I would hug him and we would rock. And the rocking to him, even now, a lot of times he rocks. I can see it starting when he starts to get nervous, and the rocking seemed to help him. And then he liked things that spun, and I would spin things while we would do that, so that his mind would change, the behavior would change, and it would move into a calming sense of STEM behavior instead of a hurtful STEM behavior of hitting. So he's now starting a little bit of verbal struggles that are disturbing as a parent to hear, and so we're working on trying to change the language, and then find something else that could be in place. As a caretaker, we start to really try to notice, what is it that's causing the anxiety? Is it a certain situation? Is it certain things happening? Maybe too much noise, maybe too much stimulation, maybe it's something that's very difficult for them to do, and so that raises their anxiety. As a caretaker, we have to be very vigilant in finding the things that are feeding this behavior, that will lead them to this behavior, and alleviate those ahead of time as much as possible. because a lot of times those situations will lead into meltdowns. And so that kind of segues me into the meltdown talk. Meltdowns are different than tantrums. In toddlers that are on the spectrum, to the naked eye, tantrums and meltdowns may look similar. And a lot of times parents will say, oh, my kids have tantrums too. They're just having a tantrum. That's not a meltdown. There's nothing wrong. That's typical toddler behavior. Well, it's not. And I will say that if that's something that you say to a caretaker who is dealing with spectrum, really is dealing with it, they're just not thinking that it is. They really are. That is a very, very insensitive comment to make. So just FYI. But it is very different. Tantrums typically are goal-oriented. So the tantrum is, here I am a toddler, I want to have that toy and you're not giving it to me, so I'm going to scream and yell and kick my feet or hit or something because you're not giving me what I want. And so you either give them another toy to distract them from it, or you ignore the behavior and they get over it. Tantrums are goal-oriented. Meltdowns are not goal-oriented. They can happen when nobody's in the room. They can happen when nothing has happened. Everything's going as usual, and then boom, you're in meltdown status, and you don't know where this tornado came, but it's right down in the middle of your house. So meltdowns are sometimes starting from a stimming behavior, starting from something that would normally cause a stim. It could be too much going on. It can be too much going on in here. It can be loud noises or noises that they're super sensitive to. Again, as a caretaker, you have to be very vigilant in noticing these signs ahead of time. But meltdowns, you can't really stop them. You can't distract them. They kind of have to run their course. So as a caretaker, you just have to do what you can to ensure safety of the child or adult who's having the meltdown, to ensure safety and to ensure safety of the people around them. A lot of adults who still are dealing with meltdowns related to spectrum disorders, they actually have dogs that can sense it coming before it happens. It's amazing. But you'll see a lot of times they have animals that will sense it, and there's a video that circulated a while ago of a grown woman who is on the spectrum. I believe she was Asperger's, and she has a dog that would keep her hands down because she would try to self-harm, and he was already sensing it coming, so he was right at her. Beautiful little golden retriever, and it was an amazing story to watch. And I could sit there and understand what was going on. And to see that happen as an adult, and to know that she had that animal there to help her when she's living on her own, is a huge comfort. As an adult with your child, you kind of have to do the same thing. I mean, you really can kind of sense it coming. You can see it coming. You can almost pre-plan it. And so a lot of times with my children, we would avoid certain circumstances that I knew were going to lead to a meltdown. Even if I didn't know it, if there was a chance that it was going to happen, it was in their best interest for us to avoid it and try to figure something else out. Even now, I try to avoid it. As my daughter still has them more often than my son. It is something that she deals with at school, and her teacher is aware, and her special ed teacher is aware. And so there are times that my daughter's had to at least go to her special ed's classroom to be able to calm herself down. Example, to be more specific, my daughter does not deal with anything that might be scary or make her uneasy. She is my child who, for Halloween, she wanted to be a fairy riding a unicorn, and that's totally tells you my daughter. Everything is rainbows and butterflies, and everything is beautiful. It could be completely gloomy gray outside, and she'll look out and go, "It's a beautiful day." And I just look at her and go, "You know what? It actually is, because we're here, we're together, we're healthy, and we're happy." It's her outlook. Everything is beautiful, and she doesn't want anything to mess that up. And I think that's great. So anything that does make her nervous usually will lead to a meltdown. And this was a couple weeks ago. They were talking about Grinch at school, and she will have nothing to do with Grinch. Nothing. nothing at all. And that sent her into a meltdown. Now, nobody there knew that. But when I found out that she was screaming and yelling and had to go to her teacher, her special ed classroom, to calm down, and she had to take a walk, and then I asked her what was going on, and she mentioned Grinch, and I was like, that's what it was. So they had Grinch Day today, and over the last couple weeks, we've done a lot of talking about the Grinch, because my son loves it. He thinks the Grinch is hilarious. And so I had to talk to her about, at first, the Grinch was very grouchy, which is kind of why they called him the Grinch. But at the end of the story, he sees the Who's in Whoville and how loving and caring they are and how forgiving they were of him. And it made his heart grow, and he became a very, very nice Grinch. And he wasn't grouchy anymore, which is why they called him Grinch, not Grouch. So I've had to kind of really expand on it to explain it to her so that today, hopefully she was a little bit more welcoming to the ideas. So to avoid, hopefully, a meltdown today. She didn't sleep as much, so it's like high meltdown alert. So we talked again. I reminded her about the Grinch. So we shall see how it works. But those are kind of the things as a caretaker of those on the spectrum that we try to avoid, and we try to preempt a lot of those things, which is also why we have to be on high alert at all times to notice things, so that everything is a catalog in our minds. And you don't know when the meltdown's going to happen, but when it does, we have to be able to think backwards of what was leading up to it so that we can try to alleviate the problems in the future. I also have that information that I can help her teachers understand now that they're in school and they're in mainstream kindergarten. So, that's kind of the difference between meltdowns and tantrums, and I hope that helps explain to those who don't deal with it on a daily basis, or even that do, some maybe tips and techniques on how to work through that. So, to have my announcement, I'm so proud of my kids, and these are things that, maybe some people take for granted. I take nothing for granted with my kids, because the smallest things with children on the spectrum can be such a big deal. Even my daughter looked at me and said, "Look, Mommy, I'm putting my heels on the ground." I mean, I teared up. I was so proud of her. Because she noticed it, and to anybody else, we're like, well, of course we all got our heels down. No, she doesn't. And we've been talking about it a lot. So that's a huge step for her. So I wanted to share my son, who a big trigger for him, his anxiety is because he is a pleaser. He loves to please and make people happy. That's a very big deal to him. And I call him my closet perfectionist. He wants to do everything right. And if he thinks he's not going to do it perfect, it's a huge anxiety trigger for him. And fine motor stuff has been a struggle for him for a long time. And it used to be when I would have to have him sit down and do something, that would immediately lead into a meltdown. And so that anxiety is still there. He's better at managing it. But I wanted to share, and even this picture to me was great because he didn't choose the color black. He chose a different color. This was his first day of kindergarten, his coloring, and it was actually not too bad. Typically, it was literally what you would see of a 3-year-old, just scribble all over the page. And this was actually really good. I was very pleased. But that was his first day of kindergarten, and here we are just a few months later, and he was using all different colors. Yes, there was a guide, but he used black just for a little bit, and he was actually trying to color in the whole area and staying within the lines pretty well. So he really did great on that, and I have to say he's also getting some AR books, and he's really doing well on his reading, and he's looking forward to reading. His sister, if you haven't seen some of my other videos, his sister is hyperlexic. She's a lexicon. She has hyperlexia, which she has been able to read and decode. It wasn't that we sat down and did a lot of learning how to read. She just decodes words. Just, I see it, it's done. She decodes it. She knew Hippocrates the other day and had never seen it before. And with him seeing her just being able to read, to him, he thought, well, you're just supposed to know this. And he doesn't just know it. And so it was another source, very real source of anxiety for him. because he felt like there was something wrong when there wasn't. He was very average at his age. So it's kind of set him back in wanting to do that. But now he's actually looking forward to reading every day because he's having some good success. And then my daughter, fine motor was always harder for her too, but she's a little bit more willing to really try. So her first day of kindergarten, this was her coloring. Again, all sorts of colors used. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason. But now her picture came back the other day like this, staying in the lines. And I just think it looks beautiful. I literally want to frame this and I want to make it into a canvas and put it on my wall. I'm going to get emotional. Now, we also got 2 things coming from her from school. One of them is a diagnostic report. And this is kind of what I had mentioned to them at the beginning of the year. And there's something, I've worked with children for a large part of my life. And, you get people that see their kids as the greatest. They're so talented and they're so great at this. And I say this. And then you work with the child and you go, well, I don't know if that's on point. And I think it's great for parents to always have 100% faith in their kids. It's just, I get nervous that I'm going to look like, oh, well, my kid reads at a 2nd grade level. And they're going, yeah, okay. And now they actually got her star reading scores, where she does. Performance is comparable to that of an average 2nd grader, in the 3rd month of the school year, which is, she's a kindergartner. She's 5. She won't turn 6 until May. And she is reading at a 2nd grade level, and she is comprehending at a 2nd grade level. Of course, comprehension is hard for her in certain areas just because 2nd grade information is a little bit harder for her to understand because of life experience. She's not at that age, so she hasn't had as much life experience. So having a full understanding of what's going on in the story is hard, but she does comprehend it, and I try to relate it to things she can relate to so that she can actually understand the story and answer her test questions the right way. And my biggest announcement is that I got a note from her special ed teacher yesterday or day before yesterday asking if I was okay with pulling her social skills class time in the special ed room from 60 minutes a week. So she would see her special ed teacher 2 mornings a week to work on social skills. And she feels that it may be best for her to do one of those days in the special ed room and then do the rest of it in with her mainstream kindergarten class. So we're going to be lessening the time that she's doing social skills in special ed down to 1 day a week, 30 minutes. And of course I said, yes, I'm okay with it. If you think that's best, I will sign the paperwork. And so I want to mention this stuff because I want other parents who are just starting on their recovery journey to know that if you just stick to it, and you have to have the mind of a steel trap to really grasp a hold of any little differences you see. But there is hope, and it does work. There is hope for these children to improve on just their life and what they can accomplish and to be able to reach the goals that they want to reach. That this is completely doable. It's never easy being a parent. It's definitely not easy being a parent of children that are on the spectrum or have anything that you're facing. ADD, ADHD, that's not easy either. SPD, anything that you're facing with your children, none of it's easy. But I will say that every single one of us as parents, it is our job to help these children. And if you can get on a good recovery plan, please do. If you can connect with people to help you do that, do it. Because it does work and it is real. And your kids can do this, and so can you. So I hope this information has been helpful. Thank you guys for subscribing. Please be sure to share this with anybody that you feel may have more information to add to it. You can always comment on the videos, and please reach out. If you want to reach out to me, I'm open. If you want to reach out to somebody else, please do. And I wish everyone a wonderful day. And it's Friday here. Weekend is upon us, so I wish everyone a blessed weekend, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.